Jim, another question. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com. I'm banging all sorts of stuff on my desk. Sorry, Jace. Shut up, Inoki. There we go. This was sent by Victoria Donovan. This was mentioned in passing on an entry of Guess the Program, but not elaborated on. What does Jim know about Babe Sharkey's title claim?
Oh, good Lord. That was in the 40s? And truthfully, he was just another guy that Pfeffer had got involved with, right? And was trying to push a different line of succession for the championship, like he did with a number of guys, Dave Levin and various people, trying to make a case for him, right?
Yeah, Babe Sharkey, I want to say that right before the war ended in Dallas, you started seeing him in the programs. Like, this is the real world's champion right here, not the other promotion's champion. Babe Sharkey has a claim going back to whenever they concocted it.
I don't have posters of his, but I do have some of the posters that they made for Dave Levin, and they were trying to quote wins that Levin or that's what Pfeffer and a lot of the promoters then would do. They would quote a win that a guy had in a certain place over this guy that proved then that when that guy went on to become the champion, he'd already been beaten by this guy, so he ought to be the champion, that type of thing.
You know, I just grabbed something here. I'm kind of fascinated, and I always have been, with the different title claims, the ones that, if you actually go by wins and losses, are legit, that just trail off because whatever, and the ones that are bullshit. Obviously, was a big part of Pfeffer's game, was just all sorts of claims. It didn't even have to be a title, just claiming anything. But I have here, I may have mentioned this to you a long time ago. You may have one too. I get such a kick out of this. It's from I think the late 60s. It says, coming soon, Bruno Sammartino, World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. If you open it up, there's a photo of when he won the belt at Madison Square Garden. There's a photo of him here with Willie Gilzenberg and some people from the Athletic Commission. There's a photo of him with Buddy Rogers in a, not a bear hug. What am I thinking of? How he backbreaker upside down from Madison Square Garden. And here's the World Heavyweight Champions list. And it pretends like Bruno won the World Championship from Buddy Rogers, that he never lost to Luthez at the beginning of 63.
Yeah.
It's Bruno Sammartino defeated Buddy Rogers, who defeated Pat O'Connor, who defeated Dick Hutton, who defeated Luthez, who defeated Billy Watson, so on and so forth. It wasn't like this story was everywhere that, there was a tournament or Bruno did this or that. This was...
Well, see, the tournament story was reverse engineered because for people, and they've gone back and guys like, remember Big Andy Varga, who was a big fan at the time, but Bill Apter has weighed in on this, and some of the other fans that were around at the time have stated that watching the television, at first, Vince Sr. and the whole Capital Sports, Northeast promotion tried to just get away with that Buddy Rogers was still the champion, that he had not lost the belt in January in Toronto to Thez, that they just stopped saying NWA World Champion. But as far as the people in the Northeast knew, Buddy Rogers was the world champion because he lost the belt in Toronto, and there was the newsstand magazines were 2 or 3 months behind in those days from when something would happen versus when it would show up. So, and that was just a small group of people overall compared to who was watching the television and going to the matches at the Garden in New York and etc. So they just kept referring to Rogers as the world champion. And then when Bruno beat Rogers, May 17, 1963, then he was the new champion. And it wasn't until several years later in the mid-60s when there had been some magazine publicity, obviously, that had infiltrated, and they were trying to come up with a title lineage that would be believable And back in those days, that's where they came up with the Rogers winning the tournament for the WWF championship. And then
Rocca.
Bruno winning it from him.
From
yeah,
Rocca.
and beating Rocca in the finals, right? The previous big star. And they did the same thing with Pat Patterson and the Intercontinental title in Buenos Aires or whatever tournament. But that was the original. They had reverse engineered it several years later because by then they were having relations with the NWA and trying to work on deals and things. And so as to totally not shit on them, they came up with a tournament story, but they didn't tell it on TV at the time. They tried to get away with Rogers never having lost the belt till he lost it to Bruno.
You know, the Pat Patterson one is always interesting to me because Ted DiBiase had just been there as the North American champion in a feud with Pat Patterson over that belt. And then when he left, the belt left. And all of a sudden, Pat Patterson was Intercontinental champion. It's just weird that they had a belt that they just suddenly established on TV and then it left and they all of a sudden have this new belt.
I guarantee you, Watts used the North American title, although at that point in time, it may still have been the Leroy McGurk territory, but there were other North American champions. And I bet you somebody, whether it be Vince Sr., Vince Jr. kicked it in, or whatever, said, let's start our own and make up a new name and make it bigger than North America.